Comics are as good as ever, and it is so much fun to get to talk to them every single week. And today, we have the honor and privilege of having a guest on who talks about how amazing comics are every single week. You've probably seen her live, you probably know her. She really doesn't need an intro, but I'm giving her one anyway because Casually Comics, Sasha of Casually Comics, is one of the brightest voices in the comic book space on YouTube. And tonight, for this little nightcap with Casually Comics, we're going to keep it really chill, really casual, and get to know Sasha. Sasha, thank you so much for joining us.
Well, thanks so much for having me, and I definitely cannot live up to that intro, but
You do every single week. I've been watching you for a while, and a lot of the people in our community are big fans of yours. I consider myself a fan of yours, and you bring a vibe to this space that I don't think any other channel has really captured. And that's why it's so exciting to get to watch you all the time because it's not about, being like it's not about crapping on comics, which I really appreciate that your channel doesn't go down that road. It's really about the love.
no, I just enjoy talking about them and talking about whatever. And Alvin just came in. He was not supposed to, but now he's here. So for those who watch my channel, Alvin's my cat, and he has managed to break his way into the stream. So it's feeling really authentic at the moment.
It's fine that me and Marco have cats too that pop up on the show. So this is par for the course for the comics fans.
This is
Oh.
a cat welcoming environment. See, there you go.
See,
That's how
there are
this.
more, Alvin.
Yes, yes. I am catless. I'm a dog person more so, but
You gotta get a dog on the stream.
oh gosh,
Oh,
she.
hold on. He's knocked my headphones out. That is always the fear.
That my cat does
There
that
we
on my
go.
work calls. So yeah,
You gotta love it. These animals, they just want our attention so badly that when they notice we're distracted, they need to do things like that.
Exactly. There's lots of bloopers on the channel that don't ever make it in of just him coming in or at the end of whatever I'm talking about. I love when it happens during a Catwoman or something video. I'm like, it's so appropriate.
Do you leave it in then?
On occasion. I always put them at the end though. I'm like, I feel like they're a bit self-indulgent. So I'm like, I'll save it to the very end for people who might actually want to witness Alvin.
this is a very YouTuber who has cat specific question, but can he tell when you're recording?
100%.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Same with my cat Jordy. As soon as he knows I'm live or on a work call, he's got to make an appearance. He knows where the shot lies too. He's got to know. So there's the thing with cats and cameras.
When I'm doing interviews myself, it's part of why I use StreamYard is because it gives you that option to record with the multiple audio tracks. And so there has been many a time where I have to use the guest's audio track to just hide the fact that he's in the back.
But I think his what he's doing now, those noises, I think they add a little bit of like little
Ambiance.
interesting. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's like those cat purring ambient noise generators, right? Yeah,
We're getting some ASMR.
exactly.
So,
Yes.
Which also big on YouTube. Thank you for now letting me add that as a tag on the
as a
video.
tag,
So
there you
yeah,
go.
Yeah, we have a whole bunch of people here with us live who are big fans of yours. A lot of people really anticipating you joining us. We've interviewed quite a few people on the channel, a lot of creators, but one of the names that people keep bringing up whenever they talk about like, oh, who do you want to see us partner with yet next? It's always you. You are always mentioned.
That's very humbling, I have to say.
Well, you've managed to carve out a space on YouTube that just feels like you kind of not dominate, but like it's definitely your space. Your audience is massive. And every time you drop something, it does great numbers. I mean, you have over 200,000 subscribers talking comics. That is not an easy feat at all.
I just really appreciate that people are down to come and talk about whatever. That was one of the things when I first started the channel was trying to figure out like, oh, is there going to be a specific thing I'm always going to talk about? Are we going to cover issue by issue? Are we going to do trade by trade? What are we doing? And that's when I kind of just decided to go, as I used to say more often, like wherever the whims take us, because It's really just whatever I'm vibing with at the moment, and I'm so glad that there are so many people who enjoy the randomness of whatever we're going to talk about, because sometimes I don't even know what we're gonna talk about. Right now, I'm deep into, for some reason, rereading all the issues of comics that have the shade in them. Will that ever make a video? I don't know, but I'm enjoying it.
Hey, it could. I mean, honestly, what surprises me is, yeah, we all make Batman videos, whatever. But there are some of us who, our audiences are so tapped in. You can make a video about Shade. You can make a video about Resurrection Man before the Rom V book, and
Mm.
people will show up for it.
So Sean, you're saying we should make a Sideways video then, specifically
I
about
am.
You
Sideways.
know that people would show up for Sideways. Come on. Every
Ah,
time
there we
I
go.
put
Yep.
Sideways in a thing or a thumb or anything, people show up and they're like, I miss Sideways.
Sean was about to shoot me down. Thank you for backing me up on that one.
But that being said, Sideways, for some reason in this particular community, pretty popular. I like Sideways.
I don't know. There's just something about him that he connected in some way. So maybe missed opportunity, because I saw that they're doing more stuff with Red Canary. And during a couple years back, they had paired the two of them up together. So I was like, maybe it's time for Sideways as well.
I think 5G ruined his momentum in terms of like the young heroes. I think some people got put ahead of
It
him.
ruined a lot of people's momentum. So.
Yep.
So, how did you build your YouTube empire, as it were? What inspired you to want to jump on YouTube? And what has your journey been like?
Well, I've been on YouTube for a long time, like longer than people realize. Since high school, I've been doing like my own like fan videos and stuff like that. I used to work on a channel called Top 10 Nerd, both in front of the camera and behind the scenes. And eventually, I just wanted to talk about what I wanted to talk about, because there's always going to be room to talk about Batman and those kind of things. And I love talking about Batman. But so sometimes I wanted to talk about way more niche things. And so it kind of just became a creative outlet to be able to just talk all these kind of nerdy things. And because I kind of missed those old forum spaces a little bit, where it felt more like you could kind of talk about whatever. And I was kind of hoping to recreate a little bit of that feeling, even though it's obviously a different format. So it's not quite the same, but just kind of putting it out there like, hey, I think this is interesting. Does anybody else think this is interesting?
Totally. And I think a lot of us on YouTube are hoping to be able to create that space where it's like, hey, this is what's in my mind. Let me reach out and see how many people feel like I do or interested in what I'm interested in. But you've parlayed that into, again, over 200,000 subscribers, which anybody who does YouTube knows that that is not easy to do, especially not in this niche. So, is there anything that you think sort of makes you stand out in the pack?
I got lucky. I got really lucky, because there are so many people out there who make amazing content, and like sometimes it just doesn't hit the algorithm. I remember the video that propelled me forward in the algorithm, and I managed to then ride upwards, and that was the video about Power Girl's boobs. And it absolutely exploded. And I still have a lot of fondness for that video, because it was talking about from like an editorial kind of perspective. And so that one, because then I was able to just do a bunch of videos about Power Girl, her confusing history, just a whole bunch of stuff. And from there, I was kind of able to figure out what it was I wanted to talk about. I was like, okay, I really enjoy doing these kind of retrospective type things, and also focusing in on either a specific character, a specific story, a specific era. And so it kind of helped me to find what I enjoy focusing on. So even though the focus is always different, I always like to really take something and examine it. And I think I still do that.
Mm.
I think there was that one recently, or relatively recently, but you did one about Malice once the Invisible Woman skin
Ah,
came out
yes.
in Marvel
It was
Rivals.
I
Yeah,
was so happy that people were like, "Who's Malice?" Because I find that story so interesting. So it was
yeah.
just kind of like, now's the time to
Yeah.
talk about this story.
When else could you do a story about that niche, Invisible Woman character arc,
And
Uh,
that episode from the 90s series that so
okay,
many
yeah.
people forget about.
What what is your like so obviously every YouTuber has their own philosophies as far as why things work for them, why they don't work for them. So like I've received the advice a lot like, oh, live channels struggle to grow. Um, is there a strategy that you have employed that has allowed you to reach the level of success that you have?
Funnily enough, I feel like I don't do the things that you're supposed to do because
Mm.
there are lots of things and I know they work. So people should do these things. Don't do as I do. You should have a schedule and upload regularly, and people can expect your content and all of those things. I've just never been in a position to be able to do that. So I feel that I've just again been incredibly fortunate to have cultivated an audience who's along for the journey of talking about comics. And one of the things I would say that is helpful is, if possible, finding a way to marry what's topical with what you're genuinely interested in. So, not just hitting it because it's the thing, but like, is there actually something you want to talk about or can add to it? It's one of the reasons I haven't ever talked about Avengers 200. Not because I don't think it's an interesting story and there's not a lot to talk about with it, but just because I'm like, everybody's talked about it. I don't know what else I would have to add to this discussion, you know?
Yeah, I definitely understand where you're coming from with that. There's an oversaturation that can happen with certain topics, but like when Absolute was the thing, right? When that
Mm.
first launched, your channel was one of the only channels I can think of, maybe one other off the top of my head, and that's probably Sal from Comic Pop, who had an interview with Scott Snyder, and that was kind of when you came on my radar as a major deal because Scott went to you in the sense that most of us couldn't get that, but you were able to get that. Why do you think that you were chosen, and how have you built that relationship up with some of these incredibly talented creators to do your channel?
Again, I'm not sure why, but some of them watch me. And so I know that he saw my video about Mr. Bloom, and that's how we ended up getting in touch. And so from there, he was gracious enough to give me some of his time to discuss, everything about Absolute and the like. And he's always so enthusiastic about talking about, which is always a really good time. And I love hearing all of just the insider type things. I love talking to creators when I can. I don't get to do it as much as I would like to, but I always just love hearing the different philosophies, headspaces, and approaches to the creative process because they all have one that's a little bit different. And I really enjoy learning about that.
Yeah, we've been lucky enough to have quite a few creators on the channel, and it's always interesting to get to pick apart their process. Like in my mind, it's the same way with getting to talk to another YouTuber. Like,
Mm.
how do you do this? I know how it's supposed to be done, but how do you do it? Because everybody's got their own process behind it, however they express their creativity.
I mean, it's like a comic script. Like there's an idea of how it should go, but everyone's script is wildly different. It's not a movie script. It's not a TV script.
Well, how did you guys decide to go the live route?
So we were doing this show for years.
Hmm.
We started in 2018, I want to say 2017, 2018. And it was mostly just a podcast with no visual element. And we were speaking into the void, quite frankly. It wasn't until like 2 years ago, 3 years ago, we brought this guy, Tyler, on the show, and that changed the game because we were able to go live. We kind of switched up our process behind the scenes, and initially it was about being on Twitch. But
Hmm.
I kind of realized, like, wait a second, YouTube is where the core comic book audience is. They're not on Twitch. And so let's try going live on YouTube. And that helped us grow. I mean, we had under 1,000 subscribers 2 years ago, and we were already a thing for the prior 6 years. And in
Hmm.
that small time frame, we've been able to grow to 5K, which isn't massive, but again, we're mostly live and stuff like that. Our audience is pretty sticky, which I'm grateful for, but I can't imagine doing this any other way but live.
It's really, I think there's a core of people who are seeking, to discuss comics. And because it's not as centralized as it used to be. A lot of the older sites, some of them have gone by the wayside, or it can be a bit difficult when you're searching to find exactly what you're searching for. But I do feel that there are a whole bunch of fans who just want to talk about comics. I see it in my DMs because there's such a wide range. It's people who are 17, it's people who are 65. It's the kind of thing where people just they love this hobby.
And I
Go ahead,
think
Zach.
the live part is integral into like just my enjoyment of doing this too,
Mm.
because that's feedback. That's live feedback.
Mhm.
It's people asking questions, bringing things up that I did not even think about. That
It can
on a
be really
pretty,
fun to
yeah, yeah,
just
yeah,
see and bounce some stuff off, or even just be talk even when I do things like read the solicits, it's just really fun to see people's live reactions to, "Oh, I love that," or, "Oh, I hate that," and just be able to, like, discuss it and see why.
yeah, 100%,
Yeah.
yeah.
Like, do you have a Discord server?
I lurk on Discord, but I don't have one. Discord frightens me a little bit. I think I've watched way too many YouTube drama videos that start with, "So there was this Discord."
That's a fair point. Yeah, yeah.
That's too funny. The reason why I asked is because it's really the combination of going live and that live feedback and the conversation that you kind of get to have with your audience, and the Discord piece where not only can the conversation extend, but you can, I mean, our Discord is global. There are people from all over the world, so
Mhm.
like it's constant conversation, and sharing of news and things like that. And it just makes reading comics that much more fun when you can read a book and then go to your Discord where people are there for you and see what they say about the book and like what's exciting them, what's on their mind. It makes me feel more tapped in than I've ever been.
It for me, it feels like because I read comics digitally now. I'm not a
Mm.
physical single issue buyer anymore. I buy plenty of trades, but it feels like the comic shop experience. When you would go there, and there'd be occasionally some people there on Wednesdays who'd maybe shoot the shit about comic books.
Mhm.
At the shop. It's like that, except you never leave. It's like the Hotel California of comic book stores in a way.
But less ominous. So
Sometimes, yeah. Our Discord for sure. Yeah, but it's good.
A lot of people in the chat saying they're subscribing to you. That's Sasha at Casually Comics. You guys definitely want to become a part of the legion of fans that she has. She doesn't just go live. Her live streams are great because it's a very similar vibe to this one. But she also puts out fantastic high quality videos on a fairly regular basis about topics that are interesting that I don't think you can find just anywhere. Is there a topic that you've done recently that you think is really interesting that people might be curious enough to head on over to your channel and check out?
I've been talking a lot about Alan Scott, which has been a lot of fun, going all the way back to the golden age and picking apart pieces of that origin, specifically because there is some bits of it that have been being worked into the absolute Green Lantern stories. And I'm not sure how familiar people are with Alan, just because not as much of his classic stuff has been reprinted. Like I did a short, I was like, did you know he had a dog named Streak? And then people were talking about, has Streak ever teamed up with Streaky? And I'm like, no, unfortunately.
I feel like everyone during that time had the pet equivalent.
Well, what was really funny was that that dog was created by Robert Kanigher and Alex Toth. And then years later, they create another one, Rex the Wonder Dog. And I'm just like, they just really wanted this dog to happen. They just needed some kind of dog.
Toth can create anything, and I'm in for it. We actually have something a semi-related super chat from a Tom account here.
Mm.
It says, Sasha, welcome to the Comics Pals. Love your videos on the Silver Age. Which Silver Age series do you find to be the most fertile in terms of giving you something to riff on? Lois, Jimmy, other?
Definitely Lois. Superman's girlfriend, Lois Lane, is one of my favorites. I'm not sure if everybody knows, it's one of the reasons that the channel exists, even though it's not the first thing that I talked about. The first video I ever made was about the amazing Spider-Man and Superman crossover from the 70s, the first Marvel DC crossover. But years ago, when I had my other channel, Shipper's Guide to the Galaxy, I kept wanting to discuss comics. And one specifically was the very first issue of Superman's girlfriend, Lois Lane, where she thinks that she's a witch, but it's just Superman gaslighting her the whole time and like making her think that she has powers and can fly and like all of these other things. And it was just such an entertaining story, but it didn't fit. And it was kind of like, this doesn't fit what I'm doing, what I'm talking about here. But it was something that always stuck in the back of my mind. And when I finally did start Casually Comics, I was like, you know what? This is finally maybe other people care about Lois Lane and her Silver Age shenanigans just because they're so different from how she is in the modern era, but they're also integral to how she got there, even though it doesn't necessarily seem so at first glance.
Damn, that's interesting. And it comes so over here we do something called the deep dive. And it largely spawns out of something I'm interested in, a question I have about older comics. And then I end up doing as much research as I can to learn
Mm,
everything about it, and then I sort of present that to the audience. And I love that because it's like I'm not old enough to have been around during the Silver Age and reading all those old comics and things and having that knowledge. So I get to work backwards and
mhm,
go to the 70s and see like, well, what happened during the DC implosion? Why did that happen? You
mhm.
know? And there's such a rich history of comics that I don't think many of us really know.
And what's really fascinating then too is then you get to, well, I find this fun. Examine the present bias, like what parts of this seem important because they became important and which one of them are standing out on their own. And I
Mhm.
find that kind of thing really fun to examine as well because there's always that factor to kind of consider, like how am I reading this because I know what's coming, which is always something that I like to consider when I'm looking back at some of the older works, especially when you get to the height of the comics code.
No kidding. Do you find it difficult to read older comics just
No,
from the wordiness and everything?
not personally. I actually enjoy it. There are times when that's what I want to read, where I'll just seek that out. I've been fortunate enough to be able to collect a lot of the omnibuses and the little compendiums and those kind of things. I'm really enjoying the DC's finest that they're putting out right now with just some of like the chunks of certain eras. There is something about how they're written that I personally really enjoy, and I've never had a hard time with setting aside that things are written in, like, a certain era with a certain kind of cadence or, like, a certain kind of attitude or energy. I've always just found that interesting whenever it crops up. I'm working on a Silver Age one right now that has some very questionable romance in it, but I'm just finding it very entertaining.
That's one of the things about going backwards with comics that can be interesting too, is like finding the things that maybe played at that time or people just weren't thinking about in the way that we think about them now, and looking at them through the modern lens and being like, wow, maybe Colossus and Kitty wasn't cool, or like all these different things that with our modern brains just come across differently than they
But
might have back
also
in the day.
separating which of those things are actually out of pocket and which of those things are kind of their time, because there can be a difference. Like there's a difference between what happens with Hal and Aricia and some of the other kind of stories that come up. It really depends who's writing them, and like then you can kind of trace a whole bunch of other stuff there, which is really fascinating. I have not touched Hal and Aricia with a 10-foot pole because that's something where I know I have a different take than a lot of people. So I'm like, I'm not ready. I'm not ready, and the world's not ready. So
Can you explain what that is? Because I don't even know about that relationship.
okay, so back in the Bronze Age, they introduced a character called Aricia, and part of it is that she's kind of a little nod to the Lensman, which some people say is one of the inspirations for Green Lantern in general. That series, and at first she shows up and she's just like overeager, sweet kid, basically, and she has this massive crush on Hal Jordan. She just thinks he's the best, and it's really obvious, and he spends a lot of time shutting her down. Like he actually has to shut her down and be like, "No, this is inappropriate. We can't do this." And then the writer switches. And then the new writer comes on, ages her up. And so she like her body goes through this transformation. Now she's older. And then next thing you know, she's like, "I'm older now," and they're making out in a cave, and then they have a relationship, and it's just like, and it becomes in the fandom one of those like, why would Hal Jordan do this? But I'm like, why would the writer do this? I'm like,
Right.
because there are actually stories where he's flat out going, no, this is inappropriate. And then it's like the SpongeBob meme, like 2 weeks later. I'm like, why?
Yeah, I didn't know her by name, but I knew her by design. So seeing
Yes.
her, I was like, oh yeah, this is that weird one. Yep. Okay.
Oh, I'm seeing the one you pulled up too. That's even worse. That's when they
Yeah.
brought it back later, and that's when they re-put her child mind into her adult body. Like, yeah, that
It's like
yeah,
some
yeah.
Image Comics ant
Nah.
kind of stuff. Oh no.
What the man? Comics are there is some history there. I'd never heard of this before, so thank you for educating me on that.
That maybe you didn't want to know about.
Well, I mean, I kind of do, just because it's like this is what happened. You know what I'm saying? Like for me, um, the warts and all of the history of
Mhm.
comics are what they are, and like I kind of want to know them.
If you just
I love it.
if you just Google Hal Jordan and Aricia, that's with an A. You get so many panels for comics that would be on those comic panels without context, like pages,
Yes.
where it's like, oh, I don't think context could even fix this for me.
Yeah, context is important, but I don't know what context could make this okay.
Also,
So
were the Green Lanterns employing child soldiers?
I know because she's like 12. But
Yeah.
one of the explanations they give, they're like, no, it's because her planet, they give
Oh,
like
of
the anime
course. Yeah.
explanation.
Yeah.
They're like, okay, so her planet was super far away. So even though she's 12, she's actually like this, like way older than him. And I'm like, but the way she was written was clearly, you can't trick me. You can't.
like they were just desperate to make that
Yeah.
happen.
And the editor was like,
Like
yeah, fine.
how convoluted is that?
It's like my girlfriend is a 1,000-year-old slime. Like we're heading in like that kind of like direction.
Real quick, I wanted to get this in. Entertain me with the $2. Says welcome, honorary pal, casually comics, Sasha.
Well, thank you very much. I'm really glad to be here.
And Entertain Me actually followed up saying it was subscribing to Casually Comics that got me interested in finding other comic YouTube voices. And that's what led me to the Comics Pals. So thank
That's
you, Sasha, for
awesome.
that.
That's the casually comics to the Comics Pals pipeline.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Sasha, for existing so that we could get just a little bit of your audience to come on over this way. Thank you.
Well, I
Now,
enjoy listening to you guys when I can, which is not that often. I rarely have time to actually listen to YouTube, but I always enjoy just like the chill vibes and that you're actually talking about the comics that are coming out and like, like what's inside them and all of that good stuff. So,
oh, thank you so much. I didn't actually think you were a listener, but I appreciate the fact that you are. I really
Yeah,
do.
appreciate that.
Um, Speaking of modern comics and what's going on right now, you have had a lot to say about the Absolute Universe. And just recently you did the Absolute Green Lantern video and kind of
mm.
digging into what's been going on in that space. What are your thoughts about the state of the Absolute Universe, and are you still as excited and gung ho about it as you were when it kind of kicked off?
I personally am. I'm really enjoying it because right now it's at that phase where it's starting to interconnect with like each other and also because everybody who's working on it is really going for it. And I find that really refreshing to see and it's fun to see them push it and it reminds me a bit of Tangent, early Tangent.
Mm.
Like it's got that same kind of energy. It also reminds me a little bit of the Silver Age changeover, though not to the same extent. I don't think it necessarily will, but I think it has the potential to really have some staying power if it keeps at it in this direction because what I'm seeing also is a bunch of new people coming to it, which is exciting. I get lots of comments from people who are like, I've never read a comic. Or like I've never read Green Lantern, I've never read Batman, but I'm here and I'm reading this and I'm really enjoying it. I think that's just so fun to see.
And it's like, when was the last time we had not an exodus? We've had some exodus, we've had some people leave the space, but when people come in droves, the last time that I can personally think of is actually the New 52, which
Yes.
has, a negative reputation, but it brought a lot of people into the fold.
The New 52 also is having a bit of a not renaissance, but people are giving it a second chance, or the voices of people who couldn't say they liked it at the time are now at an age and in a position to turn around and be like, you know what, actually, here were all the awesome New 52 titles, which I think is really fun. I was talking to Dom of X a little while back,
Oh yeah.
and he was talking about putting a highlight on the all new, all different era of Marvel as someone who really enjoyed that. And I'm like, yeah, do it, you know?
Yeah, what was that? That was like during Inhumanity, like the Inhuman Renaissance as well,
The
or the
Inhuman
yeah.
push. Yes.
Yeah, I think those Inhuman books are good though. But yeah, it's just in the moment sometimes that you lose that. Like I just like the New 52 I think is looked back on poorly, but like that's when I Vampire came out. I'm a huge I Vampire fan. That was a great book.
Mhm.
So there's enough distance now that we can talk about it fondly.
Mhm.
Just want to say thank you to Mr. Gavin Guidry, artist extraordinaire himself, for gifting 5 memberships to the channel. Congratulations to Jasper Eddy, Crocodilla Trennan, Mark Howd, Cloned Avenger, and Stepan for the membership. I hope you guys enjoy your timed exclusive videos and those emojis in the chat. Really appreciate that, Gavin. Um, what's your favorite Absolute book?
My favorite absolute book, it kind of shifts depending upon what mood I'm in. That often is how I am with comics in general and characters. People will often ask, like, what's your favorite comic? What's your favorite character? And I'm kind of like, what mood am I in? Because right now I'm in really enjoying Green Lantern from a more analytical perspective because I'm really loving all of the little subtle things. I loved the way that it worked in the kind of yellow weakness, and I thought it was really clever in the fact that so many people didn't even notice that that's what it was doing. But I was like, "Oh, it's gold, and gold is yellow." But then they went, like, the whole Full Metal Alchemist route. They're like, "The laws of alchemy," and I'm like, "I see
Whoa.
you, but also."
That's Al Ewing for sure. Yeah.
Yes. What
I
about
think
you? Like, which ones are you enjoying the most?
for me, I waffle between Absolute Martian Manhunter and Absolute Batman. Martian Manhunter just feels so fresh and exciting.
Mm,
Dennis Camp is such an amazing talent, and then the art. Oh my God,
mhm,
Javier is pushing the boundaries of what we think about as comics art and the colors and the way they're putting that all together. It's very refreshing. And then with Batman, that to me is just like the most exciting Batman stuff that we've gotten in at least a decade, probably more than that, to be honest. I think Batman's been in a bit of a weird spot, and I appreciate the fact that Scott is taking sort of everything he learned from writing Batman for a decade, and then also his real life experience getting older. Having older children now, a kid
mhm,
about to go to college, and seeing how that impacts the way he thinks about Batman. That's been very exciting.
mhm.
Yeah, the cool thing about our show is that when we do our weekly comic book show, we have a pick of the week. So there's data to tell us what our favorite books are if we forget. So typically for me, I've been kind of waffling too between Absolute Wonder Woman and Absolute Martian Manhunter. I think Martian Manhunter has been our pick of the weeks for every time it's been on. Besides, I think I'm the lone one who picked Wonder Woman above it 1 week.
Mm,
But I mean, for everything Sean said about Martian Manhunter, I'm just excited that more people get to see Javier Rodriguez's art.
mhm.
I was saying on the show last week that I saw somebody just walking around New York City holding a copy of Martian Manhunter,
Oh, that's awesome.
which is like you don't see that really anymore, you know. And I didn't even know if there was a shop nearby. Like I had to figure out where he even got this from. So that was just awesome.
Yeah, I think it's great that the Absolute books are making people excited about comics again. And I think the Ultimate books are doing that to a degree as well. I'm not sure if they're I'm not sure if they're driving new readership in the same way though. What have you seen on that?
I've definitely seen more excitement around the Absolute Universe, but I also talk about DC more often. So I'm like, there's definitely a bias on my channel towards an expectation for me to talk about DC more just because I do. And it's not necessarily because I prefer them over Marvel. It just depends again on what's catching my fancy or interest at the moment because I did that um catch up on Ultimate Spider-Man relatively recently, I think, like a year in, and I want to do that on some of the others. But overall, I feel like the Absolute books are just pushing it a bit more in terms of how hard they're trying to be a little different. And that campaign that some people kind of lightly mock, the whole like without the whatever and without the this, and like there's still absolute, I'm like, but it's stuck in your mind and people remembered it. It's that kind of thing. And also, they came out really hard with having, like, the absolute trinity and that kind of thing, and there's still something, in my opinion, very strong and iconic about the DC characters, and, like, when you do something like that, so big, so wide sweeping, and the way that Scott went out there and ran the gauntlet, just making sure that it was talked about absolutely everywhere, I think made a pretty big difference. Then also they started competing with each other, which is always good for them when Marvel and DC are competing in a healthy way.
Yeah, I completely agree. The Absolute books feel a bit more radical, and I think that they're looking at what's working in other spaces and they're applying it. Like, for example, the Absolute books from an art standpoint, just art, they don't feel like traditional DC comics. Hayden Sherman, yeah, I'm sure they could get work in DC outside of this. They're working on Dark Patterns. But
Yes, which I also
Hayden,
love.
right, yeah, it's insane. But Hayden's more excuse me, their style is more indie. It feels like.
There's a lot of callbacks to almost like Mobius type vibes in certain paneling and the way that it's laid out, which I really appreciate.
Yeah, totally. And I think that's bringing in people who may not ever want to read a mainline DC book who will say, "Oh, well, I can get behind that."
And,
Mhm.
and I think the absolute universe is the MO of what that universe is a little more clear. Um,
Yeah.
they said it, when they were pitching it's the DC universe if it was influenced by Darkseid instead of Superman. Like
Mhm.
the fact that I can reiterate that. So
Articulate it,
yeah,
like, right here.
yeah, exactly. Whereas the Ultimate Universe was like, well, this is a return, but not really, and the makers like you got to do a lot more explaining for the Ultimate
Well,
Universe.
also, a lot more is coming out behind the scenes about how much pivoting
Exactly.
and
Yep.
changing they
Yeah.
had to do in terms of what was going on with what they were initially planning versus where they ultimately went, which happens a lot. There's always behind the scenes stuff that we don't hear about 2 years later, if ever. So,
Yeah, that's a great point too. Reaper XC wants to ask, uh, what field profession were you in before YouTube? Is this your full-time job or do you work outside of that also? I always think it's interesting to find out if YouTubers are able to sustain their lives this way.
I'm a video editor. So, that's my trade, and, specifically, I do everything, but weddings is my niche. So and I love it. So
That's perfect because
it's like
you
it's I love editing. Like I got into everything YouTube because I love editing. It's the part of the process I enjoy the most. It's the part I'll never give up, even though it's the part that would be the easiest to offload. But I still remember discovering YouTube when I was a teenager and seeing all these AMVs of like people making like music videos like Dragon Ball Z and stuff and watching them and being like, that's so cool. And then at the end, I remember one had credits and it said made with Windows Movie Maker. And I was like, I have Windows Movie Maker. And so from there, I started just making videos and I graduated up eventually to Premiere and then just kept going and made editing my profession.
It's so funny because like I started on Windows Movie Maker too as in
Mhm.
right before high school actually. And I was making like me and my friends, my brother and friends were making like jackass videos,
Mhm.
but us. And
Yeah.
I was filming on like some kind of like Tony Hawk helmet cam that was the worst quality ever, but like I had fun using Windows Video Editor. Yeah.
Mhm. I
are
really
there
enjoyed it. It was pretty intuitive. I found
It was
anyways.
easy. Yeah. I remember it was within the last year I was like, does that still exist? Can I open that? Can I use it for something? I wanted to recreate those like the format size for it with the black text, like a text box window,
Oh, yeah.
like a
Mhm.
credits thing. I wanted to recreate it exactly in that, but I couldn't.
Is there some kind of dead YouTube channel that has all the like the anime AMVs you made with the Linkin
Oh,
Park music in
yeah.
the background?
It's still I was well, it got taken down, and I'm sad about it, but, my channel's still up, but the one video I was super proud of was it was a Dragon Ball Z video, but it wasn't to Linkin Park, and so I felt super cool. It was to, it was a Mr. Crift, like, techno song, "Work You," and I did it to specifically I still remember, it was androids 17 and 18 fighting Trunks, and it was like a whole thing.
See, now I want to see that because that sounds cool.
Like, I'm so sad because that was back in the day where before the copyright system had come in the way that it was, where it just claimed your revenue and just said, like, this has stuff from this, where they would actually just take it down and just nuke it out of existence. So a bunch of those, and like some of them I didn't have saved, but there's actually a fair few that lived on that channel and they're still up and I leave them there. I'm like, I'm like, fun fact, those videos were part of my portfolio that got me my first job. So I'm
Hell yeah.
really, really, yeah, pleased with them.
Cool. I think I did
That's
a
amazing.
Naruto one to Rammstein way back when. So yeah.
Nice.
Reaper XC points out 46 likes, 72 watching. Let's get those likes up. We've got Sasha here with us for a little late night comics chat. Thank you to everybody who showed up. Appreciate you. Whether you're a fan of Sasha's channel first or a fan of our channel, wherever you're coming from, thank you for being here. Sasha, I'm curious. How
Mhm.
did you get into comics? What's your comics origin story?
So I got into comics because I had this wait while I was going to university. I took the bus to another town to go to university, and my bus stop was right in front of the giant bookstore up here, which is Chapters. And I had all this time to kill. And so I was just wandering around the bookstore every day. And at that point, I was saying this, I think, to Mark Miller the other day, was when they started to really collect everything into trades. So there was this massive, like, graphic novel and trade section that kind of just popped up. And I was always just kind of circling around it. And one day I noticed the cover specifically for Batman Hush. And I was looking at it and I just thought the art was gorgeous. And I recognized most of the people. I was like, there's Batman, there's Harley Quinn, there's Nightwing and all of those kind of things. And I picked it up and I thought that it was really cool. I read it all the way to uni. And then from there, I was like, I want to kind of collect more of these. And it just kind of spiraled from that point. And then it kind of unlocked certain childhood memories of reading comics that I had forgotten. And it was only two, it was just two that my dad had lying around, which was Catwoman 13 and then some Hulk issue that I have no idea what it was. Oh, and Witchblade. That's true. There were some Witchblades
Mm.
lurking around somewhere.
Were you into superheroes at all as a kid?
I was into the cartoons
Yeah.
like a lot. I loved Batman the animated series, Spider-Man the animated series, the X-Men. I was always renting those from the video store when they had those little VHSs where they had like 2 episodes on it. So I was
Yep.
always getting those.
And which was the best? Which of those series was your favorite?
As a kid, it was Spider-Man.
Mhm.
As a kid, it was Spider-Man all the way, and I feel like that was partially because of the theme, the amazing guitar riffs that they had in the intro and
Oh yeah.
outro. As I got older, it became Batman, but I also have a very strong fondness for the X-Men 90 series too.
Yeah.
I was just thinking about X-Men 97 the other day and like they had no reason being that good.
I know. I was doing a watch along with that, and it was so fun
Yeah.
just keeping up with that
Yeah.
week by week.
But yeah, Batman the Animated Series. I was that was like my commute food. You know, I was
Mhm.
constantly watching that on commutes. There's nothing better for comic book fandom than a public transit commute. Because I
It's
was,
true. You have so
yeah,
much time.
yeah. I remember reading Walking Dead 100 on the New York subway, um, and being disgusted at it, just publicly disgusted at the Glen scene.
Hey, Michael DeFont, thank you so much. Been a Comics Pals VI pal for 4 months. He says the comic book related crossover of the summer, the Comics Pals and Casually Comics. Very cool. Thank you. Thank you, Michael. Appreciate it. Yeah, I think it's weird because as kids, right, or at least for me, I did not directly associate superheroes and those shows with comics.
Mhm.
So it took a while for me to kind of figure out, oh, these characters are from comic books that we can actually read. And so the first comic that I ever remember reading was Secret Wars. I got it from
Mm.
Universal Studios. They had like the trade of it. And I got hooked. I was like, "Oh my god, this is crazy. I know all these people, all these
Mhm.
characters on this cover from watching these TV shows and playing these damn video games. I didn't know that they were in comics too. This is crazy."
What's
We're really
really
lucky.
funny
Yeah.
about that is that also that those books like Secret Wars, Hush, and stuff, when you get into the fandom, there's a little bit of like, oh, this is the crossover book. Like, for Secret Wars or for Hush, it's like, oh, the one where the guy who looks like he did it. But it's like, but those books, they're really good gateway books.
Exactly. That is why I will never quite understand the level of jadedness that some of us allow us to get to, where it's like, oh yeah, I don't read crossovers, they suck, or I wish they wouldn't make them, or whatever. And it's like, no, dude, you're neglecting the amount of people to whom these are important, and the way that they got into comics. And sure, there are better comics than them, but that's okay because they got us to the dance.
It's the first hit. Like when I first
Yeah.
started getting into comics outside of like what my dad gave me as a kid, it was reading Wikipedia for Civil War and being like, I want to know what's happening here. I need to read this now. And I think Civil War is still pretty good, but it's not the greatest comic in the world. But like that's what introduced me to like stuff like the Initiative, which I am a huge fan
Mhm.
of. And it's the gateway, and I think there's some benefit to it for sure. Somebody's gateway might be One World Under Doom right now. I
Or
think
Hush too, you know?
yeah, could be.
You sound more questionable. You're like, yeah, maybe.
There was a bit of a question at the end of that. Could be, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, man. But even with that said, though, like I think that events have a vital role to play in comics. How exciting was it during Absolute Power and what has come after Absolute Power in mainline DC, where it's like now all of a sudden there's a Challenges of the Unknown book. It's canceled. I mean, it's over now, but like it was
Mhm.
really great. The question series that some people were really enjoying, and all these things that connect and tie together, that's really fun. Like I read comics because of that superhero comics because of that connectivity, and I don't know if I would be here without it.
Well, that's the key thing though, is that absolute power, even though some people say it didn't, it did matter. So the event needs to matter and have an impact. Like absolute power still has things that happened in it that are ricocheting down into some
Right.
of the comics that are going on at the moment. So it did make a difference. Like it didn't live up to the usual, like solicits like things will never be the same. You've been
Yeah.
anticipating but I mean a few things do. But the thing is, things are actually changing in an interesting way. I am so curious for this new history of the DC universe that Mark Wade has coming down the pipeline. I'm so excited to see what it fixes and what it makes a mess. So,
Well, we interviewed Mark a few weeks ago, and I don't know if it was a slip. I don't know why he said this, but he said that they were going to make it so that they were going to canonize the fact that, and I think it's been canon before, that Hippolyta will be essentially the first Wonder Woman sort of
mhm,
idea, that she made it to man's world first, and
mhm.
um, other outlets took that and ran with it, that
Yeah.
Mark had said that, and people were like, "Oh, that's terrible! I can't believe he's doing that. Why are they letting him ruin Wonder Woman?" Blah 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 blah.
I might have fed the episode to DC updates on Twitter, who then took things out of it like that, and people were the tweet for that one. People were pretty heated about that. But I'm like, hey, read JSA. There's some good Hippolyta stuff there.
Read New History when it comes out. Like
2 weeks.
until it
Mhm.
Yep.
comes out, we don't know. We don't know, and so I'd rather live in anticipation and excitement than dread for something that's kind of minuscule.
I love when they try and make everything make sense together because it ultimately never does. So I'm
Right.
like, I'm so excited to see what's gonna come back, what's gonna go out. Because like you just said, like that's been something that's been around before. So I'm like, I'm so curious what else is gonna make its way back in because then you're also dealing with the fact that you have fans writing who are maybe gonna have a bit of a temptation to pull some of the things that they enjoyed back in. And then years later, someone's going to push against that. And that's part of the fun of the Forever story, in my opinion.
The last time somebody tried doing an accurate timeline for when each Robin was Robin, that was a mess. I'm excited to see what Mark Waid does with it.
All right, Sasha. So they give you the pen, right? At DC Comics.
Oh God,
And
they shouldn't.
listen, they lost their minds, right? So they give you the pen. What are you canonizing that is either not canon or in the ether somewhere that we don't really know about?
What am I canonizing? It's fresh on my mind right now. I am canonizing that Hal Jordan was not entirely possessed by Parallax, and that was partially his own choice
I
to
like
go
that.
through
I like that.
and snap. Or somebody on TikTok the other day called it Hal Jordan's crash out, and it's been living rent free in my head since then.
But that's how it should be. Like, I want these people to make mistakes. You know what I'm saying? Like, maybe he was pissed. Maybe he was upset about a Coast
The Coast
City and every.
City.
Yeah, yeah, I would crash out. I would.
We're talking about Hal Jordan, who was also hanging out with Aricia. So, you know, he's got a
White hair
complicated
streaks, Hal.
history. Well,
Yeah. Like, that's like hot Hal. Like, let's go. Like, yes, that's Hal too. And I feel the same exact way with Jean Grey and the Phoenix,
What,
where
Cocoon Under the Ocean?
just yeah, like she's my favorite character. I love her deeply, but I recognize the fact that a part of her story is that sort of like corruption piece, and the fact that she was in love with the power that she had and that she found,
Mm.
and she encountered this Phoenix, and you know, they always try to kind of like take that away from her, but I think that's additive to her story and her character.
It's one of those things where I completely understand why they've shied away from it, because it's hard to root for somebody like that. It's like, so those billions of people that died, like we still need to. But at the same time, I think it's interesting. And I think there's something there to that. But it's probably just me trying to have my cake and eat it too, which is why it's a good thing that I do not have the pen. Like, we need all to be protected from the Green Arrow story I would write. So, you know.
What's your Green Arrow story?
It's just that Green Arrow is not my favorite character. So I feel like it would be fascinating to try and take that on. That's one of the things that I think would be the most fun as a writer, to try and approach the headspace of like, what is it that other people are getting out of this? And what is it that I am not? And can these two things somehow be married into something that's interesting and not, character destructive?
okay, you can go deep into Green Arrow, but the real question I have is, what trick arrow would you give him?
What trick arrow? Oh, definitely like a Vertigo arrow. We gotta do that. We gotta get
Oh,
the
yeah.
yeah.
He just shoots over a really good indie comic to him. Yeah, cool. It's like just shooting, I don't know, Captain Cold with some Doom Patrol. Yeah.
Common Sense with the 499 says, by yours, truly common sense. I hope Wade acknowledged that Neuron killed Diana and Hippolyta. Didn't Wade create Neuron? And then he followed up with another 499 and said, correction, I meant to say Hippolyta takes the Wonder Woman mantle after Neuron killed Diana, and Diana becomes the goddess of truth. Sasha, does that mean anything to you?
What I take out of that is that I'm also curious what part of Wade's own like canon he's gonna pull into. It's like when he plays with Kingdom Come, or those kind of things, and just seeing how it lands now. That's something that I always find fun to look at. Like bringing back Airwave and be like, we're doing Airwave
Yeah.
things,
Yeah.
guys.
Well, I'm curious to see if I forget his name, his young superhero name, but when in World's Finest, when he brought Magog into like our main universe
Yes.
as like the protege of Superman and Batman, which I love that arc. That's such a good arc, but it ties directly into Kingdom Come. Like Wade's the guy that I want to see doing this. If there's anyone who can do it, it's him. I mean, he did it similarly at Marvel 2 years back or something like that. which I love that book. It made Galactus. It sort of brought some understanding to what Galactus is, but like that's it's an even more of a daunting task at DC.
Well, yeah, because you have so many different,
Yep, you have all the
histories and the
crises.
Earths.
Yeah,
And I was actually going through a bunch of the crises just the other day in my Shade reread because he's involved in so many books that have the crisis title. It's just really funny. It's just like Crisis on Earth 3, Crisis on Earth S. I'm just like Crisis.
Yeah, and it's so much fun, and that's one of the things about comics that you really kind of can't get anywhere else because it's like, what other medium could you say, okay, for right now, for the next year, my favorite character is Shade the Changing Man. So I'm going to look at 50 years maybe of storytelling to see every appearance this character had and read them and how that will intersect and cross over with so many different stories and everything like that. Like, that's unique to comics.
And it lets you kind of dovetail off into so many different things. And we're just talking about like the big two right now. Like there's also that whole indie world out there that's just exploding at the moment in such a fun way.
I'm glad you said that because I wanted to talk to you about indies. So we love indies. I'm assuming you do too. What are the books that are coming out in the non-big two space that you're really excited about?
I've been loving pretty much everything that Ghost Machine has been
Yeah.
putting out, particularly Hyde Street. I love horror stuff, so Hyde Street has a special space for me because it's doing so much Twilight Zone type things. So I've really been enjoying that one specifically. There's been a bunch of Rick Remender stuff as well over at Giant Generator, like the Sacrificers, there's the Seasons that recently just started. A lot of that stuff has been really fun. Even like the smaller things like Grommets, which was just that kind of short story about skateboarding in like the 80s, but I really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
you're literally speaking Sean and I's language right now with with Ghost Machine and the Giant Generator for sure. Yeah,
You can't see it right now, but off to the side here, I have a shrine to Rick
I've seen
Remender.
it. It's legit. It's like Morrison and Remender from what I remember, right?
I have a Morrison shrine and a Remender shrine.
Yeah.
And Remender's outside of his big two work has just been doing so many incredible things, and it feels like we're finally in an era where the indie comic space is standing shoulder to shoulder, not financially, but in terms of quality, in terms of big name creators who are doing whatever they want to do. It just feels like everybody's unleashed right now. And not only that, they're doing some of the best work of their career.
hmm There's some really exciting stuff coming out. I interviewed, it's gonna come up soon, like Robert Venditti about a bunch of the stuff going on for Bad Idea with Planet Death and Ordained and those kind of things. And they sound really fun. And the art in Planet Death, I can't wait to show it to people. It's just absolutely gorgeous. It looks so good.
I did see a little bit of it. We did like a pals previews episode where we were talking about like the slices for the week coming up, and this was
hmm
during Free Comic Book Day week where they had a zero issue, I believe.
Yes, they did.
Yeah, and as I was like, I wasn't too familiar on the book, and as I'm looking at the preview images, I'm like, oh, I was unfamiliar with your game. Bad idea. Okay.
They're coming out hard this year with like six or so like different things. So
Spiral Storm says, "What's that giant generator comic you recommended again, Sean?" That is Tin Can Society, which I
oh
am
yeah, Tin Can
obsessed
Society is
with. Are you
good.
reading that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a really, really good one. Are you reading Kaya?
I am not. I'm not.
Oh, Sasha.
Do I have a
Sasha.
gap in my comic reading
I
experience?
I think so. I think so because to me, Kaya is one of the best books on the stands. I think it's great. It's great for all ages. It's by Wes Craig,
Mhm.
of Deadly Class fame, and so it's got a similar Deadly Class art style, obviously, but I think Wes Craig has evolved a lot since then. He's doing all the words, he's doing all the colors, he's doing everything by himself except the letters, and it's this beautiful story about these two kids who are siblings and they are making it through this awful war-torn world, and this kid has powers. The He's a prince, and his sister Kaya has to protect him. And so it's got all these interesting questions about siblinghood and identity, and your destiny and what's carved out for you versus what you make for yourself. So there's a lot of great stuff in there.
A lot of the comparisons I see whenever we talk about it is Bone. It
Okay.
kind of fills that bone void that people have, where I think it should be in that kind of format too for like a all ages situation, but we'll see. It's good.
I'll definitely add it to the list. I have an ever expanding list
I,
of things that I need to
I was
read.
gonna add, how big is that list?
It's pretty big because I'm willing to give
Yeah.
pretty much anything a chance, and I'm interested in most things. Like most things that come out, I'm like, that sounds like it has some potential, or like I'm intrigued. And there are so many, like we were just saying, like Mad Cave is another like publisher I try to keep up with. I actually have like Endless Night right here beside me. I'm like, I need to give that a full go through. I just finished Pop Kill, which was completely off the rails, but I enjoyed it because it was so off the rails. So,
What's
like, have
the?
either of you read that one?
I haven't.
It always pops up, pun unintended there. But
Pigeon.
like whenever I'm looking at like the books for the week, because the trade dressing on it and the design of the cover always got out to me. But it was one of those
Mhm.
like maybe I'll see it if it's in trade. I'll pick it up. That might be like a New York Comic Con purchase for me. Like if I can go to the Mad Cade booth and see stuff physically, since I'm a digital
Mhm.
reader.
Well, it's because it's only 4 issues, so it's like it's a pretty quick, little read. But it's about this kind of hitman who's been enlisted from these two rival soda pop companies run by these twin brothers who like each have an arm off and they've been separated at birth and they have this rivalry with each other and they're trying to take each other down. And one of them has this woman who has developed a formula that will make the pop more carbonated for longer. And so like they need to like take her out and it's just so off the rails.
That is 100% off the rails from what I thought you were going to say. I had no clue that was the pitch. That's crazy.
They should come out with variants where they change the title depending on what they call pop in your area.
Yeah, where you are like soda kill.
It would be Soda Kill for me. When I lived in Buffalo, it was Pop Kill probably, and it threw me off whenever it wasn't soda for me. But yeah,
What is it for you, Sasha? Is it pop or soda?
I've heard both. That's the thing. So it's like people just say both.
I mean, Tyler and I live in New York, so like if I saw someone and they said pop, I would be freaked out because it's like, where did you even get that from? What are you saying? Ah,
and then Cale's in the UK right now, so they probably call it like fizzy drink where he is or something like that. So I don't even know.
Common Sense with a 4.99 says shout out to Wes Craig's new Kickstarter, Thunderhead Psychedelic Superheroes. That sounds cool. I've been meaning. I want to get Wes on this show. I love that guy.
Gavin in the chat says Wes Craig is a great guy. We can both confirm that.
Yeah,
He's a chill dude.
I've interacted with Wes many times over the years. He's fantastic.
Oh, Dave Johnson and Jimmy Palmiotti are the writers on
Yes.
Pop Kill. Hell yeah. Okay, cool.
Okay, now you tell me Jimmy Palmiotti's involved. I can see the vision. All right. Okay. Sasha, we've got to talk about Punchline.
Do I have a reputation in the punchline space?
A little bit. A little bit. Now, here's a fun fact. The most popular video we have ever done on this channel was a thumbnail created by Tyler, very smart. It has Punchline front and center. And the video was, does anybody really care about new characters? We were just talking about like why, like where are all these great new characters? And in the comments section of that video, Punchline is mentioned more than anybody. People love Punchline. And so I go to your channel and I see everybody asking you and talking about Punchline. Why are they not doing more with her? Where is she?
I think Punchline has so much potential. That's one of the things that I really enjoy about her, especially the way they positioned her. And I felt she came across as very genuine in the new media space in a way that wasn't cringe as it so often can be. There are some outings where they're very much like greetings, fellow kids, and like, don't you hate online hate? But like, there are also some very clever usages of her too. I think the mistake was also her strength. So it wasn't a mistake, which was starting out the gate with like replacement Harley Quinn, replacement Joker's girlfriend. And it's like, well, yeah, because that's great SEO and it's interesting. But then they moved her away from that so quickly, and I don't think they're ready to have her potentially occupy the Harley Quinn space that's been left for her now that they've moved Harley into that more anti-hero type of position. And that was one of the things I liked about Punchline, I still do, is that she was just unapologetically bad. She's awful. She's a terrible person. And that's one of the things about modern Harley is sometimes some writers, not all, but some downplay the complexity of her psychology and some of the hints that are there from the very beginning that there are things about her that aren't very nice and she's not the greatest person either. And even though, yes, the Joker does come and manipulate and take advantage of her, there are negative traits to her too, which is why even after they break up, which happens fairly quickly in the comics, she stays Harley. And like that's not something that's I feel like explored too much in the modern era. Whereas then you have Punchline who's coming at the Joker from this different angle, which I really appreciate, which was almost kind of dangerous where you could see her turning against him relatively quickly because almost as if she views him as like a stepping stone or for clout. It's not the same type of relationship that Harley has with the Joker where she's in love with him. She can fix him. Like, it's Punchline doesn't want to fix him. And that's one of the things I like.
There was a different type of agency with Punchline.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you check out Leah Williams's Gotham City Sirens that came out last?
I did. I followed it issue by issue.
It's great.
I was there. I was there for that. There were parts of that that I enjoyed and parts of it that I didn't. I loved the idea of her as like a hot tub like streamer, like taking advantage of like all of these people willing to pay for this game. It was some of the other characterizations of the sirens and stuff that didn't really land for me, and that art error that just made it really confusing from like issue 3 onwards. But
this right here is why DC should give you the pen specifically for like Harley and Punchline, because what you just broke down is at the root of what I think makes those characters interesting, which is that Harley is more complex than just, you know, young impressionable woman meets man, gets broken, goes crazy. That is not the story of Harley to me. And what you just laid out is a much more nuanced, compelling character that I think when you look at her from that angle makes even Punchline more compelling, because she is like, hey, all I want is everything I can get. And whoever's going to give it to me, I'm going to saddle myself to, because she's not a good person.
and
I
because
love that.
she's also partially the result of growing up in an environment where the Joker's just been allowed to run rampant. And that's really interesting too, because and it makes her name make a lot of sense. She is the Punchline. She's the result of having grown up in this kind of nihilistic space where the Joker's just allowed to just kind of be in Gotham as a fixture. She looks up his formula online, which I thought made so much sense, you know?
You are spitting right now. You like they need to give you the pen, because
That's
I I don't want to read fartacular comics with Harley. You know what? Like that's
Which
not
you
it.
did a whole episode on, or a whole video
I
on. Yeah.
did. I went and I bought it. I buried it underneath the Chew Nomnibus, but I still had to go up and look people in the eye.
I still maintain it should have been a scratch and sniff if they really wanted to go forward.
Oh, God.
It was
forward
it
with
was it was rub and smell.
Was it really?
It-
This is the digital thing. They don't. My iPad smells the same no
It was,
matter what.
no, it was scented. That's why I had to go get a physical copy. There were smells.
What
So-
was the scent?
So my friend Amanda went and got one too. She said that like hers was like really pungent and like took her out. I found mine to be like really weak. So like when I did my video on it, I was like, "Oh, it's kind of like a light methane." And like she texted me, she's like, "What do you mean?" She was like, "This comic was pungent."
But who did they hire to fart on the comic? Like, what kind of shit is that?
Well, it's just you got to recreate those smells because there were so many different types of parts.
It reminds me of when the Rugrats movie was in theaters. They had a pamphlet that you would get in the theaters that was like rubber scratch and sniff, and you would be prompted during the movie to smell things. And there was one for fart, and it didn't smell
I think
great.
one was a diaper, if I remember correctly.
I think
like one of
so,
the kids had
yeah,
a diaper, and
yeah.
so
Oh man, 90s children's books had way too much scratch and sniff in it.
I mean, I like now I just have this image of my head in my head of the printing press where they made the book where like some poor person had to fart on every single copy of this comic book. Like, what are we doing, DC? That's why it was 9.99 or whatever.
Well, no, it's because you got to mix it up in the lab. But what was funny was that they've done this with Harley before, like years ago for the annual where it was weed scented. And that one was actually a
Yeah.
problem because then like sometimes it would be in boxes and people would be smelling it and assume that like, oh, is this like are they transporting like, stuff
Oh,
in these
why was it
boxes?
weed scented for Harley though?
It was
Oh,
what the annual was about. There was like a
yeah.
running joke like
Uh,
And that,
inside
that
of it.
Harley Mac show too. She is a big fan of it. So
oh, okay, okay. Yeah, I haven't watched that yet. Uh, Sasha, are there videos of yours? Someone asked this in the chat. I think it's a great
Hmm.
I
question.
think it was Reaper. Yeah.
Are there yeah, are there videos of yours that you've done that you thought, wow, this is gonna hit, and it didn't? And then alternatively, are there videos where you were like, I just want to do this for me, and it kind of exploded?
There's often ones that I think are going to go, but don't. And then sometimes that's always the game of, okay, is this because people genuinely aren't interested? Is there an algorithm shift? Because sometimes that does happen. It's not just mainlining copium. Like sometimes there is something that has happened that day, or there's a reason, or they've done some. Like I remember one where it did really badly because they had tweaked the algorithm. So if you uploaded three within a certain amount of like time, the third one didn't get promoted. It was a recent shift. And I had been playing with shorts at the time. So it just so happened to be like two shorts, one thing. And then it was just like, you have like 100 views. I was like, oh, they've changed something. Something's not quite right. But one I thought would do better, but hasn't, but I love it anyway, and I don't mind, is the Jimmy Olsen transformation video, just because that was so fun to make. I just thought because long form content tends to sometimes pick up in like that sense. But it did average. It was just totally fine. But I just feel that people are missing out on some transforming Jimmy. But oftentimes it's ones that have the more kind of cultural like voice that surprised me. The one that has surprised me the most is my most viewed, and it's I Am Not Starfire. And that
Mm.
one surprises me to this day. So
That makes sense to me in a way because that book has a lot of controversy behind it, right? But then also a lot of channels that, well, I should say there's also a lot of people who genuinely love that book. And a lot of the channels that cover that book, unfortunately, do it from like a comics gatey type of bend. So you're probably one of the only reputable YouTubers who's done a genuine look and analysis at that title.
what really was interesting to me was seeing how many people were actually of the age that the comic was aimed at. And that was really fun in the comments because I asked some specific questions about like certain like high school assignments and those kind of things because my high school years are far behind me. And to actually get some answers of like, yeah, we still do this or we don't. I was like, oh, that's so cool that like some of the people who were the target demographic were reading this book. And I'm like, there's something there then. And what was really fun was seeing how many of them genuinely hated Mandy for like different reasons. They're like, this
Mm.
character is so annoying and I hate her and she's so entitled. Like that's like most of my comment section. They're like, why is she like this?
I guess related to that, and YouTube can probably tell you this. How much of your viewer base is women or people who aren't guys reading comics?
Not many.
Okay.
It's the split you would expect. Like people rankle at the idea that it's about 15 or so percent of the fan base that's female and they like to push the number up. But that's always been my experience. It turns if we're getting into like the nitty like gritty like we go like to the shop every week and we're going to read like some old stuff and that because I'm like there's also different levels of fandom. And that's not a judgment or placing one above the other, but there's just different things that people are into. Like some people are here for the movie, some people are here for the show, some people are here for all of it. Some people are just here to like read issue by issue. It's just different. But like my dems, I'd say for the most part are about 80% male most of the time. So
I would be really surprised if there was a channel in this space that didn't have a very similar dem. And in fact, I would say yours probably has more women in it than is the average. Like our channel, unfortunately, is four dudes. You know, like we're just four dudes that talk
Our
comics.
viewership is just 4 dudes. Oh, okay.
No, like
Wow.
You're
you
like, I
know,
didn't
A lot
know.
of, lot of, lot of burners.
what happened? How's this possible? Who are these 83 people watching this live right now? They're psychotic. But yeah, like I would love to be able to um shift that, but I don't know, I don't even know the first thing about how. You know what I'm saying? Like how do you do that kind of outreach to bring more women into the space? And I mean the best thing we can do is just be welcoming and not be shitheads and feel like a safe space, but outside of that, what can you really do?
Well, I don't think you have to do anything. The people who like comics will like them.
Mm,
And that's just like the people who want to come will come. I think it's kind of odd, this idea that you need to be like, come in. I'm like, but why? We've always been welcome and
mm.
we've always been invited to come in, and the people who want to come, come. So, it's just not, this is a niche hobby. It's definitely not for everyone.
It's a YouTube channel based on a niche hobby that has a pretty set, fandom and not viewer base, but whatever readership, I guess it would be. So you were kind
And
of
because when I was
dependent on
talking
that.
to Will Murray like a few months back, he talked about watching the shift over time. And I'm like, if things are going to shift, they will shift. And the things that are going to bring people in, you can't really predict. Like one of the things that helped bring a lot of women, and I know, was cosplay. And
Mhm.
so it's like you can't manufacture these moments. That's the thing. I'm like, they will either happen or they won't. And I don't think that having a predominantly male fan base is a bad thing. It's just, it is what it is, you know? It's like there are certain things that have predominantly female fan bases, and I don't think that's a bad thing either. I think it's neither here nor there. It just is, so long as the space is open to having, other people show up when they do.
I love that. And I've never heard, I haven't heard that perspective before. Generally, it's about like, you know, like how do we get more women involved? And the comic space has definitely brought more women into the fold by making more comics that have women in them who aren't just scantily clad, and things like that. But I think ultimately you're right. Like as long as it's not based in misogyny, and as long as it's welcoming to all people, that's the point.
I think you are seeing more people also like, drift and come in. Like when I see my daughter like reading comics, I'm like, who knows? Maybe someday she'll be interested. But it's not the kind of thing where like if she wasn't be like, you need to get in here and like read all like, these things. It's just it's just nice that these things are available and that there are more opportunities than there used to be. It's just about, in my opinion, keeping those things open.
Mm.
There is a difference between having it be like, okay, anybody can be here and we need you to come here. It's the same kind of thing where it's like we need a woman, for example, to write this character because her perspective will be correct. I'm like, not necessarily, because women aren't a monolith. You're going to get whatever perspective you get from that writer, which some people are going to identify with and some people won't. And you might have somebody coming out from completely, it looks like left field, that might somehow have a story that has this universal appeal you weren't expecting. Like you just don't know. I'm very open to seeing what people have to bring.
Let's talk about that because that is such a an important thing to me what you just said about like not typecasting people based on their race or gender. I've always wanted to be a writer. I found that the majority of the stories that I love, they're not written by black dudes. You know what I'm saying? They're not like when, Brian Edward Hill. I love Brian Edward Hill. How many Marvel books or DC books has he gotten to do where he wasn't writing a black character? It doesn't really happen. Kelly Thompson, she's phenomenal. I'm pretty sure that Kelly Thompson can write Batman just as well as she can write Wonder Woman. Why the pigeonholing? I completely agree with you.
I'm starting to see also a shift back towards like more just having different people write different things, which I really appreciate, because for me, and I'm like, it all comes down to the pitch and how it comes out. I know if it comes out, because you never know what's going to happen editorially, but we shall see. That's one of the things that's always fun. there was a quote recently from Tom King about heroes in crisis, and specifically the like Hal Jordan, I don't even know what Will is. And I'm like, I've got to make a video on this because this is a running joke on my channel at this point, and we got to talk more
You're
about
gonna do a whole video on a panel.
Yes,
Hell yeah.
100%.
Hell yeah. Here's the crisis is a bit of a meme here too. I'm I guess apologist of it, but even I can only go so far.
Point me to the channel where it's not a meme. Right? Cardiac Solus with a 10 spot. Thank you so much, Cardiac. Says, what does being written in character mean for you guys? The way a character is written when first introduced, most popular interpretation, first one you saw. What do you say to that, Sasha?
It's a really interesting question because that can subtly change for everyone depending upon when you came in. But I think written in character means sticking to certain of the core traits because even as if characters change over time, there are certain elements that are built into their backbone that if you move away from those, that's when I think you're moving off character. Like, for example, if you have a character like Daredevil who has this kind of faith steeped backstory, if you were to kind of all of a sudden move him and be like, he doesn't believe at all anymore and he's completely secular and he's down at the club and like, all that kind of stuff, I'm like, well, then, like, now he's being written out of character because you've moved him so far off base. I mean, I think you could do an arc where like that's happening, but it would have to be tied back to some kind of crisis or like something that he's going through. Like, why is this happening to him? But to just show up and then be like, this is Daredevil now, I think would be what pushes a character out of character because they have these histories that create an imprint, a general impression over time. What do you all think?
For me, it's more like you know it when you see it. And it's like, you'll know when something's out of character. It's hard to say what's in character. Sure, there are the core tenets, like Daredevil, for example. His Irish Catholic guilt is in character.
Yeah.
Although I do want to see him at the club. That sounds pretty fun. He's just be a wallflower the whole time, just be looking at the calendar app on his phone. Or I guess he can't be looking at it. But like when something is out of character, that's what's like, oh, it just feels off. I don't know if it's like a vibes based check, but like there could be like actual things in the comic that just feel off.
I'm actually one of those people who I kind of feel like people get a little bit too precious about this stuff. I don't care that much. Like, I care that the characters feel like they're supposed to feel, but I can count on my hands the amount of times that I've seen something that was really out of character that I thought like, wow, that character would never do that. Because I think about it like people. Like, we all have a character, we all have a nature, we all have certain things that you can reliably say will do, but people surprise you. So why can comic book characters not step out of what we expect them to do on occasion and flip the script? I think that can be interesting.
Like, people were
Because
complaining.
they have because you have that internality and also because you are on their journey with them. So you can see all the steps that they're taking. And so if you see a step missed, it's way different than like knowing a real person because you know that there are things you don't know about real people. But when you're following like these characters, you're like, no, but I was there. Like, I was there, Gandalf, when like on Channel 2. So
I think of like when people were complaining when Punisher became Frankencastle. Like sure, on paper, him being this monster character that is, friends with like the creature from the Black Lagoon now in the sewers of Manhattan is out of character, but he was still in character as his core as Frankencastle. He's still doing the things that Frank Castle would do.
I don't even think that's out of character, though. I think that's just
I'm
the
saying it's
character
not
being put in a different situation.
Yeah, I'm saying it's not, but I think people were complaining like this isn't Punisher anymore. This is out of character for that character. Yeah, he's a freaking Frankenstein now.
That might be more that the environment has shifted too much, which I think is a different thing than the character shifting. Because sometimes, if the environment is also part of the story. And so sometimes if they're too far removed from that, then some people are like, whoa, like I didn't sign up for this. Like when Daredevil, I don't know why I'm thinking about Daredevil so much. Like when he moved to San Francisco with Black Widow.
Mark Waid, yeah.
Yeah, I think about Civil War. And in Civil War, there were a lot of people who said that most of the characters felt out of character to fit
I
what Mark Miller
I am one
wanted.
of those people.
Oh no! All right, see, because I love Civil War. Civil
The
War is
I
my
do too.
the
favorite.
slide is already up on the screen, so open up the dam, Sean.
Who do you think was written out of character?
So at the time, I was reading religiously Cable and Deadpool. Well, not at the time. I had the trade, like the big thing. And that book just stopped. It just stopped. And all of a sudden it introduced this whole like Deadpool's on this side and Cable's on this side. And I was like, why? It had nothing to do with what was going on beforehand and was so clearly like we have this story where people are on different sides. And so these characters need to be on different sides. And it did lead to like the divorce era, which is an era of Cable and Deadpool that I enjoy. But that was my thing with Civil War was that even though I enjoy it as a story, it did feel like, okay, we're stopping and like we made a chart and like these characters are on this side and these characters are on the other side. And everything's just going to have to go from that point because I could never fully embrace the base conflict of that story, even though I enjoy it. But I feel that way about a bunch of different stories where there's some stories I feel like kind of the opposite about where I hate what they've done to canon but I enjoy them. Like Civil War is kind of one of those for me where like I enjoy it, but like lots of the things that spin out of it because the characters were placed in those positions have ripple effects that just kind of keep going. It's the same with Identity Crisis. So
It's kind of forced a binary, and people had to pick a side.
yes.
In editorially, you could feel that too. It's like, all right, here's the
Mhm.
crossover.
I don't
And I
know.
felt like it simplified Iron Man a little bit, but I find that happens a lot with Tony because Tony's position as like an industrialist and a futurist can be kind of be a difficult headspace to get into, and it's I think for some easier to vilify than to like try and understand this kind of it's because it can come across as very arrogant in some ways of like this like we're going to look towards the future and it'll be better and I'm building it and like
Do you think that Iron Man was written out of character in the Civil War era?
Oh, I can understand how they got there. I felt Reed was. Like,
Hmm.
and I'm like a straight up Reed is kind of low key evil person. Like from a fun
I'm
perspective, I
with
love
you.
Reed.
I'm with you on that.
But
Yeah.
but like even in that, I was like, wow, this is a lot, you know. Even for Reed, the whole like we have this prison in this other dimension. Like we're gonna put some people in it.
A dimension he's notoriously had issues with.
Yes,
It's not.
where
He's not sending
where
people
he's
to
like we should not
Panama.
go there,
Yeah.
you know.
Okay, I could see that. I'm going to concede this. I don't agree. I think that they were extensions of who we know them to be in a heightened situation. And that is just like real humans where, if we take, we know Sasha, but what if Sasha's in a scenario that Sasha's never been in before that maybe brings out something that we've not seen before in her character? I think that's just an extension, not necessarily something you can say is out of character.
Well, that's kind of why I like reading Civil War in isolation.
Hmm.
Where I'm just like, okay, I read Civil War, I enjoyed it, but then that's not how an in canon comic book story works. And it's the same reason why I have no problem when people push back on my love of Identity Crisis. They're like, it did all of these things, and I'm like, yes, it did, and you're not wrong. I enjoy reading this book.
That's the third rail comic for so many people.
Oh.
And like before I got online and like started really going and seeing what people think about things, I had no problems with Identity Crisis at all.
Did you guys ever do an episode on that before I joined the show?
No, and it's because of exactly that. It's
Yeah.
because people have this really vehemently negative reaction whenever you talk about Identity Crisis, and it's
It's
just like,
understandable. There were so many
Yeah.
things in it that happened that are very difficult. And so I can whenever somebody is like, "How can you like this?" I'm like, "I understand exactly where you are coming from. I could talk about this. I'm not going to because some people get really, like you said, they
Yeah.
get genuinely upset. So I'm like, I'll
It-
just keep my thing like over here. It's on my shelf.
I think it's always interesting with that. That's how it's the DC universe to tackle that, where it feels like something that Marvel universe might tackle,
Mm,
but the DC universe was more equipped to make it more impactful?
It's Dr. Light's never been the same. I
No,
mean,
no.
Dr. Light never recovered from that story.
Sean, and
Well,
even
I
if
mean, if you only watch Teen Titans Go, maybe you're okay with like Dr. Light, but
oh god, they don't know.
they don't know.
I'm just, I think, more comfortable than a lot of people might be with reading stories or engaging with stories that have uncomfortable themes and topics in them.
I actually enjoy it. I think
Yeah.
it's challenging. And it's one of those things where I can completely understand why people don't want to read it. But in that story, when what happens, the assault, I'm like, it's one of those moments where I'm like, I'm surprised that this hasn't been brought up before. And it's like, it's a really horrible thing. But to me, what was the most interesting part about that was then the reaction and the mind
Right.
wipes and, all of those kind of things. I'm like, I found that story very compelling on that kind of humanistic level. But at the same time, all of the problems people have with it of it's too much, we don't want to see this, or like it puts a lot of the people in a very unheroic position in like the decision that they come to and that they make. And like it took years for Zatanna to like get out of that. But I still think that as a story in and of itself, I thought it was very strong. And still, like when people go on about like Sue didn't deserve that, Ralph didn't deserve, I'm like, no, they didn't. And that's the point. Like they didn't. It's not fair. And it's ugly. And it's supposed to be. And I kind of it's very different than there's this Alan Moore one. I can't is it like Necronom? What's the one where it's just he
Necronomicon.
tried
Oh yeah.
the one where he tries to confront the fact that he felt that like those old Lovecraftian rituals would have significant assault in them. So that's like half the book. Like it's a very different vibe reading that than reading Identity Crisis. So
Hmm. Yeah, I think a lot of people use comics for different reasons, right? There are a lot of people for whom comics are escapism, and they don't want to be confronted by things that exist in our real world that you can't really like fancify. Like there's no way
yeah.
to take essay and make it like that's just is what it is. And we all
Yeah.
have a feeling about it and it's raw and it's visceral. Of course, that's very different than superheroes having reasons to take sides and duke it out, right? And so I think it comes from a lot of that, and I completely get that. I never want the creators to be constrained
To feel like they
by
have to
the
shy
world's
away
reaction. Yeah.
from yeah, I do too. Like to not be able to feel like they can tell a story. When it comes to Identity Crisis, I feel that part of the reaction is because you see it.
Mm.
Like,
Yeah.
they actually
Yeah.
draw it, and so I'm like, that's part of why I think that it also gets the reaction that it does. I know I've seen interviews where some artists turned it down. They were like, "I'm not drawing this," So it's a lot.
Mark Miller, who you recently interviewed for
Mhm.
the Psychic Sam promotion, I think it was today, it may have been yesterday or today, he recently said, "Oh, cancel culture is over. Now we can, we're free. We can say what we want." Um, how do you sense that comic book creators have been under constraints and that there's something that's now lifted? What do you think about that?
I think in general, certain people are very concerned about online reactions to things. And I don't think in certain cases that's without merit. I've seen things, I've seen things, but like, we've been online for a while. I've seen mobs get out of control. I've
Sure.
seen how one person who's in my opinion probably not well can like go and find someone's job or like go and call their work or call their sponsors or like do those kind of things. So I don't think that concern comes out of nowhere. I think that kind of thing can still happen, but I do feel that there was a cultural moment where it was more prevalent and almost more celebrated, and there was a heyday of when people were really paying attention to what like anybody was saying online on like formerly Twitter or just social media and like really putting it under a microscope. Because I remember when I was on Twitter back in the day, I used to like posts to save them. because like a quote would happen or something and I would think it was interesting. And I felt like a weird stalker to have a folder full of screen caps of like a person's quotes. So I was like, oh, I'll just like it. I'll like it and then if I'll come back to it. And then I saw this shift start to happen where people were like, "Oh, you liked it? That means you co-sign it. That means you agree with it." And I'm like, "No, I'm just bookmarking it because at the time there wasn't really like a save function." I'm like, I want to remember, and it feels more stalkery to me to like have a folder that's labeled like I don't know, like Tom King, and like it's just full of like tweets from his Twitter, like like that's weird. So for me, but I have noticed that people seem to be a bit more relaxed about that kind of thing, and I think that's because there are different things to be concerned about. Like, in all honesty,
Like
what
real
about you? What
life.
do you feel about yeah, life things?
Yeah. I think the stuff that matters is happening in real life, and then that's where the energy can go. People are touching grass a bit.
I'm
I,
allergic to grass, sadly.
Yeah,
I've
same
gotta
actually.
imagine
Yeah,
touching grass.
allergic to grass and cats.
my look, my opinion about this is a little bit controversial, I guess.
Mm,
But like even just with the conversation we just had about identity crisis, that's not something that I would say out of the context of this conversation that we're having. Because there are
mhm.
people that I know who I consider my friends, who could see that, hear me say, "Oh, I like identity crisis," and say, you know what? I don't like you then. And that upsets me because you don't know why I like it. It's
What it
not
is
that
you're
I'm
yeah, what you're getting out of it, yeah.
it's not that I'm reading it and going, "Oh, that part is my favorite part." It's that I'm
Sicko.
reading it and the way that the material makes me feel is uncomfortable and I seek that out. I
Mhm.
seek to feel that way because
Yeah.
that's the way that I can get my brain going. Why do I feel like that? How can I
Mhm.
use what I just encountered to enrich myself?
I think the issue is comfort, though, where you're okay with being uncomfortable, and I think it's especially in the realm of fandom, and fandom being a place for people to escape reality and to be comfortable. The term comfort character is not a thing that existed 15 years ago. Um, I think people want to be in that cozy space because it is an escape, and in kind of engaging in art that can become uncomfortable because of what it is tricky for people. And I think having, Identity Crisis is the first DC event I ever read. That was my intro to DC.
Mhm.
And so like I was sure there's stuff in that book that it's fucking rough. uh, but there is like I mean, Sean, I can release the old podcast that I did where you actually get to talk about Identity Crisis. I don't know if we're allowed to release that. I have the file. Um, but
Release the cut.
oh yeah, release the Tyler cut. Yeah. Oh, don't get a hashtag going. But I think for me personally, um, there's a benefit to being uncomfortable, and I think that exceeds beyond reading to me. That exceeds beyond
Mhm.
watching TV. Like I prefer, like if I'm doing something new and I'm being uncomfortable, it's because I'm getting out of my zone and it's a new thing for me, and that's exciting. Which I don't think a lot of people get or seek
I
out.
think I think it's necessary, and I think
Yeah.
that introspection of, like, when those moments happen where you're bothered, even if it's something little, like, you read a line in the story and you're like, "Ugh," like, "I didn't like that." But taking that moment instead of just pushing it away and be like, "I didn't like it, hence it's bad," and going like, "What didn't I like? Is it actually bad because it's, like, poorly written, doesn't fit the context, or am I having a reaction because of something else?" And I think there's real value in that, and in that way, I think you can truly engage with the text, challenge it, and give some really thoughtful critique of it. Because you might come back and be like, no, it was poorly written. And then, but having examined all of that, you now have more to say about why instead of just a visceral guts, kind of reaction.
Yeah, instead of the knee jerk reaction. I think
Mhm.
there's something special in the ability to like either read words or see a piece of art that makes you feel something. Well, it could be negative, but
Mhm.
it made you feel something in that moment, and that is impressive to me. I think there is some shit out there that sure makes you feel horrible, But I think being able to like sit back for a bit, think about it. I mean, that's why I love when we do the Pals polls here, which is our weekly thing. It's like I love
Mhm.
being able to discuss something that I just read. You know, books come out Wednesday, we do it on Thursday. So a lot of time
Yeah.
I just read this thing. So it's good to be
Mhm.
able to like, is it good? I don't think so in the moment for whatever reason, but I can then talk about it, and that might change my opinion on it.
Mhm.
I just kind of feel like we've gone and maybe it's changing, but we've gone too far in a direction, and I get that it's a reaction to a lot of things that happen in the world, a lot of media that maybe didn't portray people in the best ways and things like that. But I think we've gone too far in the direction of like trying to police other people's consumption of media, other people's thoughts, a lot of thought policing. It's like what you just said, Sasha, about being on Twitter and people policing your likes. It's like maybe my finger slipped. Like you have literally no idea
The cat
how
could have been on
that
the
ended up
keyboard. Yeah.
in my
Yeah.
likes. Like you don't know. And like I love to challenge myself. If I showed my likes or what I've bookmarked just to
Don't do
read,
it.
believe me, I won't. But like there are things that I think we're hopefully all interested in that challenge us, that make us think, and that other people might judge us for. But what I say is, who are you to be judging anybody in the first place?
And I think discussion is what I like about this. You
That's what
know?
I love.
Yeah.
I love
I want
discussing it.
I
And
want to tell
it's
you why I like Identity Crisis, and I will backtrack on a lot of it, but I will at least be able to be passionate about it.
and that's one of the things I love about doing my channel is talking about the comics themselves and people's thoughts and reactions and all the different vantage points that they're coming from because there's genuine value in it because people are coming from so many different directions. And so some of them have some very different reactions or they've read different things and they're like, "Oh, this is like this," or "This reminds me of that." And then you can kind of cobble together even more of the history and tapestry of comics in that way. And I really, really value that, you know?
100%. And that's why um I don't want Marvel and DC to, for example, there was a conversation that was rampant a few years ago about them whitewashing their books, and by that I mean like going backwards and getting rid of anything that might be overly like getting rid of things that were racist, getting rid of things that might have been sexist, and it's like
Mm.
I don't love racism. I actually despise it.
Quote
But
him.
if that's what the creator, injected in the book, maybe they had something to say. Stephen King, for example. I love Stephen King books. He uses the N-word constantly in his stories, but there's a reason it's there. And if he as the creator felt like this is what I need to say, I can like it, I cannot like it, but I'm not going to sit here and judge his decision making because he's the man in the chair. He's the creator. All I can do is receive it, and whatever it does to me is what it does to me. But that's the process that I want to go through.
And plus, I don't think he'd be able to see your judgment over the pile of money that he's sitting on. So
True, too.
I think there's really real value in reprinting things as was
mm.
because then you can not only track the course of how things have changed if they've changed, and then you can also then discuss and just, acknowledge because lots of the things they're coming at from different spaces too. Some things are malicious, some things are ignorant, some things actually aren't as bad as, they're made out to be, which is one of the things I found a lot when I went into reading the Silver Age, because there was a period where there was a kind of sentiment of don't even look at it. Like, you don't need to look at it. Like, don't read it. There's nothing of value there. And I'm like, that cannot possibly be true. Just that cannot possibly be true. And there are times when I read things, I'm like, ooh, this is a certified Silver Age moment.
Like
But there are still
Lois Lane going in that sarcophagus.
there was no, actually, I think there's more value in that story than people give it credit for,
Okay,
which is
yeah.
my controversial hot take. But I can again see why people don't like it. But I'm coming at it also from a position of being a mixed race person, so that might have something to do with it too. I have no idea. But just the
But
today
you
I
have a
was
unique
reading,
perspective on that, and that's where the discussion comes in. You know?
and that's why it's
Yeah.
it's fun to discuss. But again, I feel like everybody has, which is why I leave it alone. But today, the one I was reading, there's this scene where the woman, she's helping her love interest clean his room, and he has some shady stuff in there because he's a criminal. So he yells at her, and he's like, "How dare you! Like, get out of here! You don't touch my stuff." And so, like, she leaves the room crying. But then the next scene, it's her being like, "You know what? This was my fault. He really, like I can't have him thinking I'd be a naggy, bossy wife. I've got to go and apologize to him." And it's one of those things where I'm like, yeah, this doesn't play that great, today. But the rest of the issue actually has some really complex, like psychological work on Superman. And I'm like, if you didn't reprint this or just threw it out, because of this one scene that admittedly is kind of like, ooh, like she needs to get back in the kitchen. But like then you lose all the rest
Mm.
of the story that has some like really interesting stuff. And I think there's, like you were saying, Sean, I think there's value in being able to sit in that uncomfortable space and think about, okay, why don't we do this anymore? And we can move past this, but we can still look at it. And I know that that's not a headspace that everybody has. And I respect that. But I'm just also a person who is very fearful of, like, lost media and lost connections, and like seeing a world where somebody just says, like, oh, this is what happened. Trust me, bro. And, I'm just like, no.
Yeah, and even whether or not you read it or not, it still has historical context
Yeah.
that it gives to the people who then wrote afterwards, and the people who wrote that inspired their work. You know,
Yeah, who are then like, "I don't like this, and I'm going to then go and, like, counteract it."
sure,
Because then if you lose that, you're losing, well, what are they responding to,
yeah.
you know?
Then a lot of Grant Morrison stuff doesn't make sense when they don't get to call back to all that stuff. Yeah,
That's a good point, actually. May I ask, you said you were mixed race. Do you mind if I ask your background?
Oh, yeah, I'm, like, mixed with Caucasian, and my mom was from Guyana. She's, Black from Guyana.
Cool. Yeah,
So South America.
I'm part Jamaican, part Irish, and part Dominican. So I'm all mixed
Everything.
up. Yeah,
I guess I'm mixed
I'm
too in a way.
yeah, you
Yeah,
are.
yeah. I don't think about it often, but yeah,
That's the
I
thing, I'm like, I don't often, it doesn't come up, but, like, every now and again, there is something I encounter, I'm like, "This is probably coloring my," how I'm viewing this, and also that was almost a terrible, inappropriate pun, canceled. So,
But that's exactly why I asked you that, because I know that there are stories and things that I have seen where my background probably impacted how I took it
Mhm,
versus someone else. And so I always think that that's interesting too. Like there's a book called it's by Brian Hill, American Carnage. I don't know if you've read that one.
phenomenal
I
book.
haven't, no.
Yeah, it was
So it's
tail end of
go ahead.
Vertigo, right? Or the last iteration of Vertigo.
The last, yeah.
Yeah,
And it's a book essentially about a guy who he can pass. He's black, but he can pass.
Mhm,
And so that allows him access to join the KKK. But he needs to do that in order to take the leader down. Something like
mhm,
that. Um and it asks a lot of really like uncomfortable questions about race and are you black enough and all these kinds of things.
mhm,
Um and I know there are people who are uncomfortable with that subject matter, but that's part of that subject matter is my lived experience.
mhm,
So don't get rid of that. Like let's tell more stories like that. Let's tackle things like that. That's interesting.
mhm. I think that's where some of the truly unique stories lie, kind of in those spaces. But then, of course, you're always walking the line in between, like, telling a story and just straight up exploitation,
Right.
which is something else entirely.
yeah, that doesn't turn into a Tarantino movie. That book.
Yes.
Yeah.
But hopefully, and we're wrapping up here in a moment with Sasha. If you have last minute thoughts or questions, if you want to tell her how much her channel means to you, now is definitely the time. But there are my hope is that we can sniff out those people who are being exploitative or just trying to get their hatefulness out of their system, so to speak, through art. I think that there is a meaningful difference, and I think that we have grown literate enough. I feel like I have to see that for what it is and say, you know what? You're not in good faith right now. I have no desire to see this. I have no desire to engage with you on this.
Mhm. No, I
Uh,
don't know. It's like, I'm curious, but what I think there's value in is the conversation. Like, even the conversation that we're having and not being afraid to have such conversations for fear of being shut down, canceled, what have you. Because I truly believe that the viewer, listener, whatever it is, reader of whatever the medium is, deserves more credit than they're given in being able to ascertain or discern for themselves how they feel about something or what they like or don't like. And at the end of the day, they might come back and be like, you know what? No, I don't like that. I don't want to watch you or like listen to you anymore. And it's like, but that's fine. You know, it's important though to be able to still have the space, not have people just sitting being quiet and not talking about things. Cause I've seen that extend from bigger topics like what we're talking about to really little things like, oh, I like, you know, something silly like, oh, like some people really thought the Harley Quinn fart comic was funny, you know, like they just thought it was like a good, silly like time and they enjoyed it. And I saw people be like, I'm afraid to like, you know, come out and like say anything that I like this. I'm like, it should not be that way. It should just be like a conversation. Someone's like, oh, you like that? You know, like, and like some light ribbing, but not like a your life is over because you said that you liked, you know, the Harley Quinn fartacular.
I am emailing your boss because you were rub and sniffing some Harley Quinn
Yeah,
fart
you use
books.
the rub and sniff. Like, I need to email all your sponsors.
uh Cardiac Solace with the 5 spot said, I never make the live stream, so an extra fiver just because I'm here and can this time. Thank you so much, Cardiac. Chillmonger, who's got a channel of his own and is a frequent viewer here, says, okay, but if Sasha's about to defend that new Black Panther, I'm unsubscribing. Did you read The World to Come?
I did, and I'm unsurprised that Christopher Reese did that because he's been quite vocal
Yep.
about being frustrated about only being asked to write Black characters. So as soon as I saw that, I'm like, I'm not surprised that this is Christopher Reese.
Once like I didn't get to talk about it on the show, I was absent. But once he got to that, I was like, hell yeah, this is a Christopher Priest book. I'm into
I
it.
was like, didn't
Yeah.
even need to see who wrote it at that point.
Yep.
I had no problem with that. Like, bring it on, bring the story on. Let's see, like, what are you going to tell me? Christopher Priest is very talented, very thoughtful. I'm sure he did that for a reason. So let's find out the reason. That's all. Jay Sage says, love seeing my faves together. Thanks for always giving every single super family member love on your channel, Sasha. Have a good evening.
Aw, thanks so much. You have a good evening too.
And Jay Sage is in.
He's in the UK,
we're
right? Like, what are you
yes.
doing up, bud? Come on, go to sleep. There's a reason Cale's not on the show.
This is cool, but not that cool. Sleep is cool. You need to get some sleep, brother. Common Sense says, what about Miles Morales from Earth 616? Is he white or is his mother's genes stronger than his dad's? Look, man, that is a question that I think society's answer to that question generally is whatever shade you are, that's what you are.
Well,
So
no, it also varies depending upon where in the world you are.
Yep.
that's a good point, too.
Yeah.
Because the interactions I have with people regarding what my race is, like, for example, in the States, are very different than what I have in, like, other parts of the world. So, like, it very much depends upon, you know, where you are and where you come from. So the answer, it changes, you know? It varies. Your mileage may vary.
Yeah, different people have those different. I think of the Family Guy shade graph that they bring up for Peter Griffin. But I think the bigger question, actually, common sense is when are we ever going to see that character again? Because the answer is probably never.
Miles's mother?
No, Miles in the 616 Miles.
Oh, oh,
The
yeah.
Spider Men evil Miles.
Ultimatum. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And Chemdog said, "Wait, Sasha has a channel? Yes. You don't know about Casually Comics, one of the biggest,
Cam is
best."
teasing me. So
Oh, okay.
I think that was a rib. Yeah.
Make sure that you guys are subscribed to Casually Comics. It is one of the finest channels on YouTube. If you like the vibe of this channel, I think you will absolutely love what Sasha does on a weekly basis. You don't just get the live streams with her presence and the community aspect, you also get very high quality videos on a weekly basis that are fantastic. Some of the best video production in the space. And I think you need Sasha's videos in your life. So make sure you're subscribed to Casually Comics.
I really appreciate that. That's really much too kind.
It's the truth, and I talk about like the Justice League or the Avengers of comic book YouTube, and you're 100% in that conversation. Like I think about Omar from Near Mint, I think about Sal from Comic Pop, I think about BJ from Comics Are Dope, and I think about you. And I think you have a very vital role in this space. That it wouldn't be the same without you. So thank you for what all you do.
Well, thank you for like the show as well. Like I like the weekly polls and stuff like that. I think that that's so important to, keep that kind of conversation going, especially in this time when so many people don't, maybe know or are new to coming in that, this is a weekly thing that you can be involved in, that there is an engaged community that can be a lot of fun. Sometimes I think people get daunted or scared away or don't know where to go. And so I think it helps to have spaces like this.
And I can say this for yours as well. There are not enough channels that don't have that bend of like, oh, this is about hate. Like I always like to say, if it doesn't matter if you like a comic or don't like it. If the basis of where you're coming from is not a place of loving the medium, talk about something else. That's how I always feel. And I think you do that.
No, I'm in this hobby for life now. It's got its claws into me.
Well, it was a Catwoman book that got you, right? So,
Yeah,
of
it's
course,
doomed.
yeah.
So
All right, we're gonna leave it there with Sasha. Sasha, thank you so much. That's Casually Comics. Once again, you guys can catch her live. You can watch her videos. She posts stuff regularly, so make sure to check her out. It has been an absolute honor to speak with you, and I really hope we get to do this again sometime.
no, definitely. It was a lot of fun.
All right, take care, everybody. We will see you guys